Hello again. Welcome back to my workbench. My name is Erica, and I am so happy that you're here today. Here we are back with the Stihl 028 from yesterday. I have decided that we are going to go all the way with this chainsaw. So let's put this thing back together and go cut some wood. But before we do that, I have to show you something. I went out this morning in the van to pick up 2 chainsaws, but I came back with more than 2 chainsaws. Come with me outside, I'm going to show you. It probably looks like there's mostly junk in here, and there probably is a lot of junk in here. There's some cheap Poulans, and I know there's a Craftsman in here, but there's some neat stuff in here buried. There is an 038, there's an 028, there's a Husky 51, and there's a Husky 3 something up there. And then a couple little neat things. A little Mighty Mac. Power Tough. Never seen one of them before. There's a couple partners in here. A McCullough. I just wanted to show you what I was up to this morning. So let's get back to that 028. Well, let's put this 028 back together. First thing we're going to do is get those crank seals out of there. And then we'll heat this up and get the bearings out of both sides. One seal. Other seal. That crank seal there is the one that when we diagnosed the saw, this would hold vacuum but wouldn't hold pressure. This bearing was in the freezer, so we'll see how this works. Clutch side is done. And there's the part number for the bearing we put in there. Just out of the freezer. So the inner race of the bearing was warm enough that I was able to push the crankshaft into it. You just want to be careful doing this because you don't want to close this gap here. This is not how Stihl says to do this. If you pushed hard enough on this, you could untrue the crank. I don't usually do it this way, but I thought today we would give it a try just to show you how it goes. I've got my case gasket in place here. You can't buy those gaskets OEM from Stihl anymore, so I had to get this one aftermarket. And I did put some grease on it. I asked in my last video why people do that, and they said if this ever had to come apart again, the grease would make it easier to come apart. So this has been greased, the gasket's in place, and we're going to put this thing together without using my fancy tools. I'm going to put some oil on the crankshaft. I've got this little torch, and I'm going to very quickly just heat the inner race of this bearing up. I don't want to damage the bearing or the plastic cage, just a quick heat, and then I'm going to put this thing together. So I just put 3 screws in there. I didn't tighten them. They're just in as far as they'll go, and that's going to keep everything together here while we press this thing together. Those aren't the proper crankcase bolts. Those are too long. They're out of an MS 880, but we're just using them as locating pins. Okay, over to the press. So you can see my crankshaft here, and there's room for it to move. I've got this thing shimmed a little bit to have this level, and you can see my bar studs hanging over here. So before you go doing anything, you want to make sure you have clearance and you're level. Let's take it home. There, we got it together. First things first, let's get those 3 bolts back out. They are the wrong ones, and we don't want to accidentally tighten them in. Well, you can see how slick that worked. M5 by 28 bolts seemed to work perfect. We just needed a way to hold the case together while we got over to the press. It pushed together so easy, you could probably use a drill press. You shouldn't use a hammer. It's too hard on the bearings. Let's put our crankcase bolts back in, 6 of them. Okay, those 6 are just hand spun in there. Let's torque them down. An 028 Stihl bolts, 9 Newton meters. Done. Let's put this dowel pin back in that hole right there. Just like that. There's a little bit of gasket on both sides. Let's just flush cut that off. Okay, so that gasket is all trimmed up. Let's go ahead and pop both of our crank seals in. Let's install the flywheel side crank seal. Got my new seal here. This came from Stihl. I'll just grease the lip up and we'll put it in. Just want to avoid the keyway as you're putting your new seal on. You don't want to catch it or damage it. Just like new. And let's install the other side. New seal. Greased. Same tool. We'll just use the other side. Looks good. The clutch side crank seal. There's the part number. And the flywheel side. Do you remember the story about me buying a box of old parts out in my parking lot from someone's trunk? That's where these came from. 9640 003. I think that's what that says. 1340. Let's talk a little bit about pistons. This looks like a chainsaw addict's charcuterie board. So in the middle here, this is the piston and cylinder that we took off the saw. The cylinder is savable. This piston would be considered trashed, but we kind of want to experiment with it by cleaning this up and putting a fresh set of rings on it, but we're having problems getting the rings. That's the original wrist pin. So I went on Amazon and I ordered an aftermarket piston and cylinder kit. This is 46 mil super. This is 44 mil. So these rings don't fit this. So I was going to rebuild it with an aftermarket kit. But then I thought about using all the original stuff, but I couldn't get a set of rings. And then I went digging out in my box that came from the trunk in the parking lot, and look what was in the box. And there is a brand new Stihl OEM 46 mil piston and rings. And then I thought, do I want to sacrifice this stuff and do aftermarket? So we've been debating about this, and I think what we're going to do is this. I'm going to show you something that's kind of concerning, and I don't have a lot of experience rebuilding with aftermarket parts, but here is our original piston and wrist pin, and it's a tight fit. You would have to punch that in, and we had to punch it out. And I think that's the way it should fit. The aftermarket piston and wrist pin, loosey-goosey. Now, if I take the OEM wrist pin to the aftermarket piston, it's still loosey-goosey. This is just drilled out too big. And I think if they have slop like that, they can wear and make even more slop. I tore apart an 036 on video. I think it was last fall. The piston and wrist pin was all sloppy, and it was an aftermarket piston. And anyways, I think that's a problem. Someone in the comments mentioned this to me. So this is something that I'm taking into consideration when I do this. So this is a 44 mil piston. Those rings won't fit it. These rings won't fit it. If I had rings, I'd probably try to use this stuff. So we are going to go with a OEM piston and OEM super 46 mil cylinder. Let's get started. This piston comes out of the box with the piston rings already installed, and one circlip is already in. So this is a 46 mil 028 super pop-up piston. Wrist pin bearing. We'll put our other circlip in. Yeah, our circlip is in with the gap facing up. Cylinder gasket's in place. There's the part number. The piston rings are all lubricated. We're going to make sure they're in the proper position. And then I will compress the rings and then we'll slide the cylinder on. .028, 7 Newton meters. Intake boot is back in place. And tighten down. Some repair manuals will tell you how far to tighten this. This service manual doesn't, so I just did what felt right. We're going to pressure vac test this thing. I'm going to put this adapter in the spark plug hole, and we're going to pressure vac test this through the spark plug hole. Exhaust port is blocked off. Spark plug hole is blocked. Just going to block that intake and that impulse. Put this cap over the impulse nipple. And what can we put in there? I wonder if this will fit. That might work. Okay, let's pressure vac test this sucker and see if it holds. We'll pull vacuum first. Looking for half a bar. Vacuum looks good to me. Let's go over to pressure. Just gonna hold that in with my finger because that would probably just fire out of there like a bullet. Looking for half a bar. Our 028 crankcase holds vacuum and pressure. I got that adapter from Echo. Let's plug some of these holes up. I don't want to get any dirt in there. So let's go ahead and put a new spark plug in this. NGK BPMR7A. Gapped properly. Let's put the muffler back on this thing. You can see the condition of this muffler. It's all rusty and crusty. Maybe this thing sat outside and it was probably running hot the last time it ran. I'm just going to clean the crankshaft off before I put my flywheel on. Just a little bit of carb cleaner on a rag. Piston stop. We're going to torque that flywheel to 30 Newton meters. Just like that. Let's put these AV mounts in. You can see how they're kind of crooked. I would replace them with new ones, but I don't have them here. And I'm not waiting for them because I have wood to cut. But if they look like this and you're wondering why, it's because they're worn. Let's put the fuel tank back on this thing. We'll start putting some hardware in. We'll put the chain catcher back on. It's in pretty good condition, so we'll reuse it. Don't forget to hook your impulse line up. So I was going to replace it, but I didn't because it looks like new. So I'm thinking someone's done it recently. So I just reached in there with these from this side, grabbed it, and hooked it up to the little nipple on the crankcase. If you forget that, you'll have problems. We'll fasten down this last AV mount. Perfect. Let's put our recoil back on. The rope looks to be in good condition. We'll leave that one piece out for now until we put the brake handle on. Too hard to show you this on camera, but I reached up in there and attached the new oil line and oil filter. Let's put this side of the saw back together. I think that's how that went. Two clips. We'll install the brake spring. Safety glasses on. We're going to put the brake handle back on this. I could have done that, I guess, before I put the spring on. I've got my safety glasses on, so I don't think it's going to pop off, though. You can't buy this new from Stihl anymore, so don't break it. And two pieces of hardware there. Needle bearing, all greased up. You can still buy those from Stihl for now. And there's the clutch drum that we took off the saw. It's showing some wear. I could reinstall this, or I could put a brand new one on it. What to do? Let's put a brand new one on it. I think this saw deserves it. There's the part number. I just installed that snap ring. I don't remember taking a snap ring off of this when we disassembled the saw. I could go back and look in the footage, but I'm pretty sure we didn't. So I just went and found one and put it on there. Washer and clip. Let's install our felling spike. Let's put the chain tensioner back on. The tensioner system is back on. If you're missing that little black thing or it's rotten, you need to get a new one. It creates tension and keeps a screw from walking itself out. Let's install this. So these little prongs grip the bar studs. So we're going to have to kind of tap it on there. Let's try this. That worked pretty good. Put the handle back on this thing. She's starting to look like a chainsaw now. So this top cover, it looks like there is a punch out here if you wanted to switch this over from summer to winter use. I believe if you punch this out, you could go to your dealer and buy a piece to fit in here, I think. So right now it is in permanent summer use, so we'll just leave it alone for now. This wire is going to get attached with this piece of hardware. We're going to install a new fuel line in this, and here is the part number. Notice this says no longer available. I just looked it up and I can reorder them, so I'm not sure why it says that. Maybe what's in the warehouse is it. So this fuel line is quite short, so we are going to install a new fuel filter, and then we're going to put it through the tank and pull it up through the hole in the top of the tank. You see it peeking out there. Just like that. A little bit of lubrication. We'll put our wedding ring back on. Well, we are now to our carburetor. So let me show you what we're working with. Here is the carburetor that we took off of the saw, and it was in pretty poor condition. It was crusty and rusty. There was corrosion. But we're going to try to save this carb and use it. There's all the gaskets and diaphragms that came out of it. Let's take the needle out of this thing and give it a bit of a cleanup and see what we have. The tip of that is red. You can see the rust and like the corrosion on that pin. Because of the filth of this carb and all this rust, we're going to remove the Welch plug. We're going to remove the nozzle valve. We'll take the jets out and give this thing a really good cleaning. Okay, the nozzle valve, right there at my finger. You can see the other side of it right there at my finger. We're going to punch it out, or we're going to try to punch it out and replace it. And here is a new one. These aren't replaceable in every carb. They can't be bought for everything. So for this carb, I happen to have a new one. So like if there was something plugging it, or the flap in there was distorted and not sealing, you have no choice but to replace it or get a new carb. So let's see if we can punch it out of there. I'll put it on the carb stand and we'll see how this works. I'm going to use this punch. I'm going to center on the nozzle valve. I don't want to damage the body of the carb. I'm going to try not to. But I'm not perfect and I could mess this up. So I am bending my carb stand, so I'm not going to use that. I'll just use this block. So you want to be careful when you're doing this that you don't damage any of this stuff that sticks lower. That's why I'm mounting it on that. And there it is. If you want to test to see if your nozzle valve was defective, you can put it on a piece of hose, suck on it, and you should be able to suck air through it, but you should not be able to blow air back through it. So I can suck air through it, no problem. Now it's not letting me blow air back through it, but when I first attached to this, and I did, it was allowing air both ways, and now it's not. So it wasn't sealing, and now it's sealing. It could be the moisture from my breath doing it. Now let's try to get this Welch plug out. If there was rust on top, maybe there's rust below it. And we're going to use this angled punch to try and drive it out. There's the Welch plug. I'm going to show you the carb under my phone, which is kind of like a microscope. So there's where the Welch plug was. I've done this before where I punch it out and then I do a little bit of damage in behind it. So right there, I touched that with my punch and I wish I hadn't have. But it might be okay. There's 4 passages under here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I don't think I damaged them. Just a little nick out of the body right there. I hate when I do that. So looking at this Welch plug, the bottom side of it, I could have left it alone, but I kind of wanted to show you how I remove it. Didn't want to damage the carb, but I did. If you have a carb that requires removing the nozzle valve and the Welch plug, like at what point you just put a new carb on it? But now you've seen me remove one. Let's take the jets out of this thing. So there is the low jet out, and you can see all of that rust. This thing's been sitting with water in it at some point. Let's take the high jet out and see what it looks like. Yeah, same thing, just crusty. We can try cleaning this thing. You want to keep track of which is which. Maybe we should run it through the ultrasonic cleaner. I do have an aftermarket carb here for this, a brand new one. We could throw that on and try this. So we can see these jets have different threads. This is the low jet, this is a high jet. So there'll be no mistaking them once they come out of the cleaner. Cup of tea. So this came from Walboro. Paid a lot for this. And then I seen the exact same thing in like a coffee and tea store for a lot less money. So just get this from the tea shop. 1 jet, 2 jets. There's that screw that we're going to reuse from inside the curb. The spring, that doesn't come in the curb kit, so we'll run it through. In anticipation of this saw, I went ahead and ordered a carburetor for it just in case we came into any problems. So here's what I ordered from the Amazon, made in China. You cannot buy a brand new carb from Stihl for this saw anymore. So if this other carb doesn't work out, maybe this is the way to go. We're going to find out. We'll try it with this. We'll clean the OEM one, maybe try it with it, compare them and see what's best. Funny enough, this carb kit came with the crankcase gasket that I needed, and that's what we installed in this saw. Is it normal for aftermarket carbs to come with a crankcase gasket? I opened this carb up to make sure that everything was installed correctly. The gaskets and diaphragms are all in correctly. The micro screen is in there, and the metering lever height is perfect. It's a good idea with these aftermarkets to have a look inside. I have seen them come out of the box, missing pieces, not assembled correctly. We don't know if the children that put these together really know what they're doing. I checked the high and low jets. So it came out of the box with the high jet 3 turns out and the low jet 2 turns out. So I put them both to 1 turn out each, and then we'll adjust if necessary. So let's put this on, this 028, and see how it runs. And my OEM stuff is in the ultrasonic cleaner as I speak. Put your guide piece back on before you install your curb. I had to jam this one on there pretty good. It's kind of shrunken and misformed. Okay, we're into the impulse line. Let's attach that fuel line. Throttle rod back in place. Don't forget your little nuts. This is the air filter that we took off this saw, and it is in disgusting condition. New air filter. We're going to install this OEM air filter. In the box, that carb came in from China. An air filter came with it. These air filters that have the choke built into them, aftermarket, you got to be very careful with these. They don't seal properly. I've had saws dropped off here because they won't start. And the whole problem was the aftermarket air filter on it. And they had to drop the saw off here to find that out. Uh-oh. Too busy talking, not enough paying attention. Problem solved. I wonder if the factory's wondering where all of these screws are, because I'm pretty sure that all 028s have 1 screw and then use this to fasten it down. But in the factory, they're putting 2 in the air filter. Those are like $4 or $5 each, I think. Jeez. Well, look at that pretty little 028. I think we are ready for fluids. It's not quite dark out yet, so let's slip outside and see if this thing will run. I'll meet you out there. You see the leaves everywhere? You'd almost think it was fall here, but it's August 14th or 15th today. We haven't had rain in about 8 weeks, and the trees are all losing their leaves.
I'm pretty excited to get cutting with this. It's pretty good for an aftermarket carburetor so far. I had to go in on the low to 3/4 roughly, and the high is about 1.5. But I can't tune the high yet anyways. Gotta get a bar and chain on.
Well, that 028 runs really good. Let's put a bar and chain on it, and I'll meet you at the woodpile. Well, that is a beautiful 028. Let's do a compression test. We have 155 pounds of compression. I received this nice little letter and gift in the mail last week. Thank you, hey Mr. Jazzman. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Well, we have a beautiful Stihl 028 chainsaw here. I was told to throw this thing in the dumpster. Obviously, I don't throw chainsaws in the dumpster. So we were able to tear this thing down, clean it, and put it all back together. Between yesterday's video and today's video, it's all there. And it works excellent. It has the aftermarket carb on it. My OEM carb has come out of the ultrasonic cleaner. And what I think I'm going to do is an upcoming video where we swap carbs on this. And remember the 261 that went out with the OEM carb, and we talked about putting an aftermarket on it just to test it. Maybe I'll do one video where we'll take a couple saws and do some carb swaps and just compare OEM to aftermarket. This video is getting long enough, and I'm sure a lot of you are ready for it to end. So I guess that's it for the 028 that was heading for the garbage. It's on to the next chainsaw. I'm going to clean off my workbench, organize my tools, and get on to the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you next weekend.